All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this town hall on school reopening. I know that it's an important topic for all parents, students, teachers, and staff. You know, this fall will not look like the traditional back to school we typically expect in August. You probably won't need to go out and buy new back to school clothes for the beginning of the fall term. And I know that's something I always look forward to. But I want you to rest assured that we take the educating of your children just as seriously as if all of them were returning to campus in person this fall. We hope that this presentation will answer most of your questions about our plans to reopen safely and with the greatest attention to the learning needs of our students. So on behalf of the El Segundo Unified School District Board of Education, thank you for taking the time to submit your questions and listening to this town hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nishime. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's an honor to have you joining us this evening. We have well over 510 participants, and it's climbing. So we're very excited to have wonderful participation on behalf of our parents this evening. So a lot has happened since we last came together. We, as you know, as a school district have been working hard to plan two models, both the hybrid model and a full distance learning model. In addition, we've been getting further guidance from the state through Senate Bill 98. We have finally that health order from Los Angeles County Department of Public Health to really assist us in what are the non-negotiables as we move forward when we welcome our students back to in-person instruction. We also have guidelines from the California Interscholastic Foundation for Athletics, and so I'll be touching on that briefly this evening. And of course, we have Governor Newsom's most recent action as it relates to opening schools in a distance learning model based on the fact that Los Angeles County was one of 35 counties that were on the monitoring list. So our town hall today, I regret we're not going to be able to get to everyone's questions. I'm very pleased to say we had 95 individuals submit questions, and we had well over 450 questions registered. So a number of them were for our middle school. So I specifically passed those questions on to Mr. Adam Wright and Mrs. Carrie Olashian at the middle school to support them in putting together their parent meeting last week. That was well attended with well over 350 parents in attendance. And that video has now been posted on the website as well. We have answers to a lot of your questions, but certainly we might not have all the answers. Why? Well, we're still actively working with our committees to reopen schools. We have our safety and health committee. We also have our instructional committee. Our leadership team has been planning. We've been talking on a regular basis with the leadership of both of our associations and labor partners, El Segundo Teachers Association, as well as our classified union. We've been working through negotiations with both of them. So there's lots of moving parts, and we are getting closer. However, it is safe to say that the real issue at hand for this evening is the issue of whether or not, as a parent, you feel comfortable with your child returning to in-person instruction when it is deemed safe to do so. So as you listen and you learn more this evening about what a hybrid model will look like, what a distance learning model will look like, the real big question here is one that your family will need to make for yourself. Which model will you pick? And it's really the question of whether or not you feel comfortable sending your child back to school for face-to-face instruction. Any decision that you do make will be for the entire semester. So please keep in mind, if the district moves forward and let's say In October, the decision is made to have our elementary students go back to school. If you have selected distance learning and your children are in elementary school, you will have to wait until January to allow them to return. So please keep that in mind as you make your decision. It is safe to say, as you all know, we will all be starting school in distance learning on August 26th. It's important to know, too, the reason why we don't have all the answers for you is the importance of stakeholder feedback. So all of us, whether it is members of the Board of Education, myself as superintendent, or any member of the cabinet team, or our principals, have been getting a lot of stakeholder feedback. And so we don't just make decisions in isolation. We listen to this input. And I work specifically with our Board of Education to make recommendations and make decisions to guide the district moving forward. So we're going to be hearing a brief presentation from members of our team that really try to summarize a lot of the questions you may have had. So the presentation is designed based on some of the questions, and then we'll go into actually the Q&A specifically and really highlight some of the questions. So I hope listen with an open heart and an open mind in the presentation, and you might see that your question was indeed answered. And now I'm very happy to see we're almost at 700 participants this evening. So welcome everyone, and I look forward to turning it over to Dr. Jack Plotkin.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, and hi community. I'll introduce the rest of our panelists who are here with you. You heard from Dr. Jeannie Nishime, who is our board president. We have with us Ms. Tracy Miller-Zarnicki, who is our board vice president. You know Dr. Moore, Dr. Melissa Moore, our superintendent, who you just heard. We have Ms. Marisa Janicek, who is our assistant superintendent over educational services. We have Dr. Ferris, who is our executive director of human resources. We have Ms. Kim Linz, who is the chief business official. We have Mr. Ali Rabi'i, who is the director of maintenance and operations. And then behind the scenes, we have Mr. Daniel Gauna, who is our executive director of information technology. So Dr. Moore just explained the process of how that's going to work tonight. I'm going to moderate this session. We've taken a lot of the questions and sort of bucketed them, and I will be posing those to our panelists this evening. But before we get there, we'll move on to our presentation that Dr. Moore just mentioned. Mr. Gauna is already on it. And I'll have Ms. Janicek lead off with the next slide, please, Mr. Gauna.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Plotkin. Can everyone hear me okay from the panel? Yes? A little bit? Okay, I'll speak really loud. I'm having a few audio issues.
Can't, Ms. Janicek, we're not hearing anything now. No. Nothing now.
I think she's saying to go to the slides behind her, and we'll come back to her when she fixes her audio.
Got it. Mr. Gauna, can you advance 2 slides, I believe? One more. Okay, I'm going to talk just a little bit about full distance learning options. So there's a video that I put out. There's the website for it and the QR code if you want to scan that. I recommend, if you have not watched the video and you have questions about full distance learning, please do that first. That should answer a number of your questions. But there's a couple things I just wanted to clarify based on questions I got after the video. So there's a couple things I wanted to make clear. One is that I just want to make sure everyone understands that in distance learning in the Arizona State University Prep Digital ASUPD model, it is our teachers, our ESUSD teachers, who are going to be monitoring the students and working with students. So it could be a core content area teacher, but it's our teachers, it's not the ASU staff. And the number of teachers depends on the number of students who opt in to this program. So and the class size will be, a teacher will oversee up to 36 students. So I wanted to just clarify that. There's also one thing I didn't mention for the open scale model. Open scale is the option for high school students to take college courses in addition to their high school load. There is an enrollment fee of $25. And I also, Dr. Moore mentioned that the commitment for full distance learning, that is a semester, and you can't jump back into hybrid other than at the semester, and the converse is true. If you start in hybrid and school returns in, let's say, December, and you don't feel comfortable, you're committed to be a hybrid. So you can't jump into distance learning. That's already an established class. So I just wanted to be clear that that goes both ways. And essentially, because I'm getting a lot of questions about, well, what's the difference? What should I choose, especially at the elementary level? And the full distance learning offers just a little bit more flexibility. So there will be fewer times where students are logging in kind of throughout the day to provide that flexibility where if the kids need to do the work in the evening with the parent and log in fewer times and then get more of that individual support based on what their need is. That's a distinction that I would make. And then because there are still questions, I'm answering a lot of emails. I'm hosting a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 12 p.m. An email just came from Educational Services with that Zoom link. It was my bad because the Zoom link had yesterday's date on it, but that is indeed tomorrow at 12 p.m. The invite code still works. And I also just wanted to reiterate that the decision to commit to full distance learning or not has to be made by July 30 at 11:59 p.m. And we will also be emailing out the form to opt in to distance learning, full distance learning. If you are good with the hybrid model, you don't need to do anything. But if you want the full distance learning, we have to do that by July 30. And the reason is we need to staff our teachers and train our teachers for that model. Next slide, please, Mr. Gowna. On the next slide is special education. And just a couple notes about this. So the transition to distance learning is, we realize that's difficult for everybody, and often it's most difficult for our learners with special needs. It's a totally new format for a number of reasons. So we're working diligently to sort of figure out how are we going to shift. The whole purpose of special education and special education services is so that students can access and benefit from their education in the classroom. So we're in an environment now where there's no classroom. So really what we have to do is shift how we provide those supports to support students in distance learning so they can benefit from jumping on that Zoom call from the assignments that are presented asynchronously. So there's training that we have planned. I have an upcoming meeting with our special education staff. And then August 3rd at 5 p.m., this will be an invitation that is going out. We're going to have a parent town hall for students with special needs. You don't need to submit questions ahead of time. We'll just take them in the live chat. Ms. Sue Harry is going to work with me on that. Just a couple other notes about that. I'll be sending out a new notice. You will get it in by email, prior written notice about opening school and school closure. And I want everyone to know that we are following the guidance from the Department of Education, from the feds, from LACO, in terms of what to do. We still have a lot more questions than answers, unfortunately. And I hope every day to get a little bit more guidance. We're not getting it. So we're starting to build what we're going to do anyway. But there may be guidance that sort of makes us shift as well. The last question for that is, well, my related services, if I see the psychologist or if I get speech services, will that, once we return, will that be in person or will that be virtual on the days when students are home? And the answer to that is depends on your student's needs. So if a student can benefit from the virtual, then we would prefer to do it that way so as not to pull a student out of class. And if a student can't, then we want to provide that in person. And let's go back to Ms. Janasek and see if maybe she's got her audio. Ms. Janasek, do you have your audio fixed? Since I'm not hearing anything, let's go down to the next slide, which is Ms. Kim Lins.
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Learning Connection, TLC. It's important to note that K-12 education functions under one set of guidelines, and childcare, which is what the Learning Connection falls under another set of health department orders. And so while we are opening schools in full distance learning, we are still able to offer the Learning Connection within the guidelines set forth. We know that this is something that our parents have needed, and as a district want to do all we can to support our parents that need this service. Our current plan is to offer childcare for students in TK through 8th grade. We are exploring some preschool options, which I'll discuss when we get to the questions. We're looking at an 8-hour proposed schedule with care from 8 to 4 p.m. 5 days a week during distance learning. When we are able to physically reopen, this would shift for those students in the hybrid model into a three-day a week model, so the days that they are on their distance learning days. But students who chose to stay in the distance learning model for the semester would be able to continue accessing this 5 days a week if needed. The ratio in childcare under the health orders is 10 students to 1 teacher, and the need to maintain the cohort as much as possible is required. In the distance learning model, we feel very confident that we'll be able to maintain our cohorts as much as possible during the day because they'll all come around the same time and they'll all leave around the same time. However, when we go into the in-person hybrid model, TLC will be a second cohort for your child. We don't know that we can promise that we'll be able to sustain classroom cohorts in the when we go back into in-person model in TLC. There will be support for distance learning provided. As I mentioned previously, there'll be 1 adult to 10 students as required in the model. And that adult will be able to help your child with distance learning access and with some of the work as well.
I do want to add, Ms. Linz, that when it says 10 students to 1 teacher, this is not a certificated teacher that works in our schools and provides regular instruction to your child that they're assigned to for the year. This is a classified employee who is deemed to work with our child care services. So I do want to clarify that for all our folks because we don't want to misrepresent. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. I appreciate that addition. We do, due to space constraints, anticipate that our middle school childcare and possibly elementary may need to be offered at a remote site, still in the city of El Segundo, just so that we can accommodate as many families as possible. There will be an official program presentation to the Board of Education on August 4th at our Board of Education meeting. I encourage any families that are interested in accessing the Learning Connection to tune into that presentation and learn more details about what the day will look like, what our safety and security protocols will be, and also what the proposed fee schedule will be. We also tomorrow morning will be sending out a TLC, we'll be sending out a survey to parents to see what the now that we have a few more details on our TLC program, what the actual interest is, so we can begin looking at our staffing model for the fall. Mr. Ghana, could you go to the next slide, please? I also wanted to give an update on food services. So even though the district will be in a distance learning model in the fall, we will be reinitiating food services on August 26th in the district. If you recall, in the spring, we actually partnered with other local districts and provided food services to our students at other sites around the South Bay. But now that we're coming back in distance learning, we want to bring that service back into the city of El Segundo, where it's the most accessible for our families. We'll be doing this through a grab and go service model. It will either be a drive-through model where you drive up and the food is put in the back of your car, or a grab and go at a service window with a physical barrier. We will be offering the service on Mondays and Thursdays, and we're anticipating an early morning pickup time and an afternoon pickup time. On Mondays, students would be able to access breakfast and lunch for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Thursdays, they would get breakfast and lunch for Thursday and Friday. These meals do meet all USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture guidelines, including a fruit and vegetable option as well as a beverage option in those meals. And they are not all cold options. A good number of them are warm or hot options. And so preparation instructions for each meal will be included. We'll be sending out more details, including a menu and our actual pickup schedule and times in early August. This service will be available to students who are eligible for the free and reduced lunch program at no cost. Information on how to apply to this program will be sent out in early August. It's important to know that eligibility for this program is confidential. And because we anticipate we may have new families coming into this eligibility, we'll be providing significant supports in filling out applications to any family who need it. Under the current USDA, students can also purchase meals through this grab and go service. And under the current USDA waivers, adults may pick up or purchase meals for students without that student present using the student's ID number. And so that is my update on food services. Dr. Plotkin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, next we'll go to Mr. BE and then we'll shoot back to Ms. Janasek. So next slide, please, Mr. Gown.
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. Welcome, ESUSD school community. This evening, the health and safety protocol. First, let me go ahead and share that the Health and Safety Committee has been hard at work over the past several weeks and several meetings in devising our protocol. But it is very important to note, as Dr. Moore mentioned at the onset of this town hall, that our health and safety protocols are contingent and based upon direction from the health order that was sent out by the LA County Department of Public Health. So it's very important to note that all of these protocols fall within those lines and those directives. First and foremost, arrival and pickup procedures, paths of travel. We've been working very closely with all of our site administrators in devising a path of travel that is conducive to their site and would, of course, meet the requirements as set forth by the health order. There'll be, of course, detailed information coming to families from our site administrators as to what exactly that path of travel looks like, the arrival procedures, where exactly students will be dropped off and where students will be picked up from. It is very important that we have that information to you well before the first day of the physical opening of our schools. Health screening. As Dr. Moore mentioned, our health and safety committee has been working hard in devising what is the best practice as far as screening students prior to arrival to school. We have, of course, explored temperature checks, both at school and at home by parents, procedures. And so we'll be finalizing that approach and, of course, sharing that information with our families. PPEs, we've heard of this term quite commonly now over the past few months, personal protective equipment. Every student, the district will provide for every student, K-12, 5 cloth masks. These masks are washable up to 30 or 40 times. All staff will be provided with these PPEs. Each and every classroom will also be equipped with hand sanitizer. And then going into the next piece, healthy hygiene. That falls under the category also of PPEs, but with respect to hand washing. We have secured a number of portable hand washing stations that we have assembled through our campuses. There's more to be assembled as well. And it is very critical that we, of course, educate our students on proper hand washing throughout campuses each and every day. Physical distancing, this goes well in line with our arrival procedures and path of travel. It is very important that, of course, we maintain that 6-foot separation between and among students and staff. We'll be having arrows and markings and stanchion cones located strategically throughout the campuses in line with the path of travel to make sure that there's physical distancing and that it is ensured. We've also been working very closely with our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning service provider on indoor air quality, enhancements with respect to indoor air quality, which basically means constantly and periodically replacing all filters in every single HVAC unit, and we'll be doing it far more prolifically and regularly than in years past, namely to, of course, maintain the best air quality possible in all of our facilities. And then last but not least, cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. The schedules, all those three mean 3 completely different things, but at the end of the day, it's all about maintaining our facilities to the utmost cleanest level and disinfected level. We have a newly devised custodial cleaning schedule that has been distributed to our custodians, along with training, along with equipment to make cleaning and disinfecting as efficient and effective as possible. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. BE, and thanks to our custodial staff. I know how hard they're working. Let's see if we have Ms. Janasek back. Ms. Janasek, you want to try?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Try once more.
Can everybody hear me now?
Okay.
Okay, Jack, take over my slides for me.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you a little bit, but it's kind of in and out. So I'll do my best with these. We have guidance in terms of for the 2021 school year.
Dr. Plotkin, can I try one more time? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I saw a light go off, so hopefully it was just warming up. And thank you. If I cut out, please take over. But the number one thing in the new learning model is flexibility. So I appreciate all of your patience and flexibility with me. And just wanted to let you know some of the guidelines that we do have to abide by. On the screen, you'll see the minimum school day requirements for instruction. And those are the minimum requirements that we have for teachers to have synchronous and asynchronous work for kindergarten 1 through 3 and 4 through 12. And I just want to point out Senate Bill 98 at the bottom really implores that we have daily live interaction with our students every single day in the hybrid program. And we really need to dig into who needs those supports and provide the interventions from the get-go for our special education, second language learners, and anyone that has a gap in their learning. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So what is it going to look like in El Segundo for our students? Well, it's, like I said, going to be daily for the hybrid learning. There's going to be some whole class check-ins. There's going to be some small groups and some intervention support. So every day our students will be connecting with teachers, but they'll also be doing some asynchronous work that's really teacher-guided, personalized, and structured so that parents know exactly what their kids need to get done and how to support them. We also are working really hard to align what we're doing in the classroom so that if people are working together or providing the support systems, that is a little bit easier for them and more consistent and easier to follow along. And then finally, and most importantly, really our focus for the first couple weeks of school is going to be connecting with your kids, checking in, building those relationships, knowing that they're doing okay, and how to set them up for success for the school year. Teaching them the platforms, teaching them how to handle stress and anxiety, and teaching them how to work their device if it's new to them also. So just really establishing the routines and building that community of learners. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the updates that we have in El Segundo too, we heard it loud and clear, and I've said this in other meetings, is we needed more consistent approach with our learning management. So I'm very happy to say we have some talented staff and subcommittees that brought together Seesaw for our TK through 2, Altitude Learning for 3rd through 8th, and Schoology for 9th through 12th. And again, our goal would have been 1, but it wouldn't have worked for our kids. And our focus is always what's best for kids. So we also have a district-wide Zoom account so that we can secure more privacy, really secure the lines, and make sure that we have all the things that we need to have small group learning, to have intervention groups, and we'll be having training on that for our students, for our teachers, and for our parents. We're also working with a new company, Performance Matters, to really roll out how do we assess online? How do we gather information from our students from afar and really put that in and monitor it so we can continue to intervene and support our kids? And then the curriculum to support that. Our committees are working on that as well. And I have to say, I'm so thankful to our neighbors, Chevron, next door to us. We are fortunate to have a 6th through 12th grade ITI where every single student has an iPad. Helped us in our rollout of distance learning. And we also had 3rd through 5th grade Chromebooks that were available for checkout in the spring. And that was thanks to a previous grant from Chevron. And they have just come through again with another grant so that our TK through 2nd grade students will also have a device. So every single student in ESUSD will have a device that they can take home and bring back to school when we're allowed back to school. We're also going to make sure that every single student has access to Wi-Fi and they're connected. That's what we really want to focus on in August, is connecting with our families and finding out who needs that support. Our promise is that we will be reaching out to everybody. And then finally, we're having lots of trainings this year. We've already had a week-long training for our teachers. We're having another trainings first week of August. And then once our teachers are feeling more comfortable, we're really working on the training for our parents and students. We're all in this together and we really want to support everybody. So that's just an overview of where we've been, and thank you for your flexibility on me going last now.
Thanks, Ms. Janice. I'm glad you're back with us. And Mr. Gowner, you can stop sharing the slides now, please. So we'll get right to the questions now. That knocked out a whole bunch of the questions. And so we've taken what's left and put them in a bunch of buckets. Parents, you may not hear your exact question asked, but we did read through every single one of them, make sure that they're addressed throughout this next section. So the first set of questions are kind of like the big picture questions, and a number of parents question the decision to not open up schools, even in a hybrid model. Can you explain how the decision was made, how much local control we have, and how the district reconciles the number of in-person minutes required by the California Department of Education?
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. I'll take that question. As I think most of our parents know, El Segundo Unified School District was fully prepared to go into a hybrid model and a distance model this fall. But when Governor Newsom made his announcement that basically directed that schools cannot open for in-person instruction in the counties that the state is closely monitoring for the coronavirus spread. And of course, LA County is one of those 35 counties on his list. And so the decision to reopen even in a hybrid model was taken out of our hands at that point. In terms of local control, the only possible local control is that we do have the ability to apply for a waiver for grades TK through 6. The waiver application would need to include letters of support from all of our labor unions, parent organizations, and community-based organizations that provide educational services for children in the district. We may consider the waiver in the future when the spread of the coronavirus in LA County stabilizes, but it's our intent to proceed with distance education for the beginning of the fall term. In terms of the district complying with the daily minimum instructional minutes stipulated by the state, Mrs. Janacek shared with you what those minutes would involve for each grade level. And we're still working on what those instructional minutes will look like for El Segundo Unified with our teachers union. So we will definitely keep you abreast, but I think the takeaway here is that there are minimum instructional minutes required by the state, and we will certainly be complying with that so that students have that daily contact with their teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nishime. A parent asked, how does the district make the decision when we can return to school? And then there are other questions about if we come off the monitoring list, can we expect that we'll all just immediately go back? And how much advance notice can we expect if that were the case?
Thank you, Dr. Plock, and I'd be happy to take that question. First off, we have to really look at the conditions within LA County. And obviously, there is significant community spread at this time. So we'll be continuing to monitor if Los Angeles County comes off the monitoring list. In addition, Dr. Nishime mentioned the waiver. We're learning more about what are the components of the waiver and how that is applied, and the various protocols and procedures that the county health office will require. I've asked the safety committee for reopening to really take a look at and provide input on whether we should phase back in some way or some manner. So for example, this is just simply one example, do we start phasing in when it is safe to do so and only bring back the primary grade students to start with? So we want the input of our community, our teachers, our parents on that committee, our medical professionals, to help us receive input and make the best decision as we consider that. And then certainly that is not a decision that I make in isolation. Taking all this information, I would be bringing a recommendation to our Board of Education, and then the Board of Education would be the party that would be actually voting on the recommendation. That is an important recommendation for our community, and it should be members of our community that stand behind that decision. So therefore, it could take time before that actually occurs. So it might be that it's not just a flip of a switch. Oh, we're off the monitoring list, Dr. Moore. Does that mean we open schools Friday? And it's no, we've got to bring a recommendation to the board. We need the board to weigh in. So we'll have to look at when is the next board meeting and take the time that's needed. So it could be, a 2-week lapse or whatnot as we look to see when the next board meeting is, and then certainly work with our labor partners to be sure that they're fully briefed on what the plan is moving forward. So I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Moore. Ms. Miller-Zarnicki, I'm going to shoot this next one to you because I know you're on one of our district reopening committees. How was the decision made for the Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday, Friday cohorting in the hybrid model once we're able to return? Some parents note that perhaps a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday would be safer, or 4 days on, 10 days off. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. We spent many hours talking in many configurations about all the ideas that were out there. There was blocks and days and times in the week and all those floating around in the educational ether. And during our numerous joint stakeholder meetings, and that means we had administration, teachers, district staff, board members, high school students, and parents from every level of our schools together in these committees talking. That group looked at what the district considered the top 3 calendar suggestions, being under what could be even allowed, and they looked at them from all these different lenses: academic instruction, social emotional well-being, health and safety, what would work best for the family and the community, and operations overall. And the model that we have presented as a hybrid model is the one that had the clearest pros and the fewest cons in all of those different categories. So basically it came down to, of all the cohort options, which one provides the best experience for our students and our staff in all of those categories, and this is where we landed. So it's the most regular, balanced, allowable in-person contact that we can have on campuses, with plenty of space and safety into the setup, following Department of Health protocols when we in LA County are actually allowed to do that. So that's how we ended up with that. We were avoiding Mondays being one of the regular days, because Mondays we end up having holidays and things. And so we couldn't give that be an assigned day for half of our students, because, if we run into those holidays, those particular students get gypped a little. So I just want to say that's the background on it. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And thanks for serving on those committees as well. Next, we have a parent who asks, since we were all in distance learning anyway, why are there 2 options? Why can't we just all be in distance learning together? And I'm going to go ahead and take this one. The first is that we have to have an option for students who are either high risk or who do not feel safe coming back when we are able to come back. And that has to be a high quality option. So we can't just start all together and then let's say we were able to come back in November, and then just hope that that's okay, that that kid's going to be okay because she doesn't feel safe coming back. And we also can't ask our teachers to plan their hybrid instruction for the 4 days the students are there, and then also planning the home learning, and then also, by the way, plan for the kids who are at home full time. So we need to give them a high quality option off the bat. That's the main reason. The second reason, though, is we realize some families need the flexibility of having the options. We looked at all of this feedback from the survey that was sent out, and we had a lot of parents saying, please, please, please have more structured Zoom meetings throughout the day. However, there's the other side who said, I can't handle all these Zoom meetings throughout the day. This doesn't work for me. And we need models that are going to work for both for our students and also because it's in distance and parents are helping the kids, we need models that will work for them as well. The next set of questions revolve around teaching and learning in general in the hybrid model. Some questions ask how schools plan to keep students engaged in a distance format and how schools will promote social emotional learning. And I guess I'll take this one too and just keep talking. Ms. Janice did mention a lot of the training and PD that's already happened this summer. 5 full days of training, I believe, Ms. Janicek, on the new platforms and how they can leverage those for distance learning. And we, our principals are really hitting with the teachers, and teachers are building their units kind of throughout the summer so that they're engaging, because we know that the most important piece is it's hard to engage online. And we need the kids to have those connections. So the teachers are really building their units to be engaging. It's not going to look like the old instruction. You can't just have a lecture. So that's at the top of their minds in terms of how is instruction going to look different so that we can truly engage our youngest learners all the way through our high school kids. And then we are continuing our ruler rollout. We trained 12 more people virtually just recently. So there will be, the rulers are our social emotional learning program. So there will be social emotional learning lessons. And Ms. Janicek also mentioned that this building these connections and the social emotional piece, we are valuing that above all else other than health and safety right now, because we recognize the importance of that for kids to truly connect with each other and still feel this sense of community while we are all distanced from one another. Okay, and Ms. Janicek, I'm gonna throw this next one to you. A parent notes, I know we have the ASU PD model that provides vetted content for those who opt for full distance, what is the plan? I kind of already answered this, but what is the plan to ensure high quality content for those in the hybrid model of distance learning?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Plotkin. Yes, you answered a lot of that already. Thank you. I think it's important to note that both programs are bound by the state standards. So all of our students will be going through the state standards that are appropriate for that grade level or for that subject matter. And I think what was challenging in the spring is our teachers were thrown into this. They didn't have a collaborative vessel or platform to work on together and actually bring their curriculum into their ongoing highly rigorous content. So in the spring, they were doing as they could, but with all of our planning, we're already doing so much cross-curricular content sharing, collaborating in between grade levels. It's going to be really amazing. Our teachers have worked so hard, and I really just want to say that Readers and Writers Workshop and CGI, those are effective strategies, and they're helping our kids, and they're going to be able to continue through all of the work that we're doing this summer. So it is going to follow state standards. It's everything Dr. Plotkin just said, and both programs are good options for kids. So state standards are important.
Thank you. Let me stick with you for a minute, Ms. Janicek. There's a lot of questions on specifics. Parents want to know exactly what this is going to look like. And so there's a question in the hybrid model on the 3 days students are home, how much will they have synchronous instruction with the teacher? And will they be required to log in at various points throughout the day?
Yeah, and I want to be careful with that because we're still in development, and our teachers are so important, their voice. We've heard from the surveys what's important to our parents, but now we really need our teachers to build that program by our, elementary and secondary. And I think what their one really important requirement is what we talked about is the connectedness, really keeping their kids connected and highly engaged. So daily attendance does have to be taken. Daily interaction does have to happen. What that looks like, we're still in development for, so more to come on that. And I'm sorry to say it's not 100% defined, but we are defining it right now and will be having ongoing communications about it.
Thank you. So kind of another question about specifically what does it look like? What's the length of the school day? Is it going to be the same? Will it be a shortened day to allow the teacher to check in on the home kids? And also, will we still have early bird and later gator for grades K through 2?
And I'm going to take this one, and feel free, anyone out there, to chime in if I speak incorrectly in here, because you're involved in many, many, many more meetings than I am on this, and things may have developed as this ever-evolving world does. So as you saw on the slide earlier, we know there are minimum instructional minutes required, and it varies per grade level. But again, those actual details and timings and how it's going to play out are still being mapped out with our teachers. And, everybody understanding what works best on all sides. My understanding is that teachers will be working a full day and students will be spending time in a mix of synchronous and asynchronous work every day in a similar schedule to some levels, varying, again, by grade level. And what I understand is knowing that teachers are only dealing with half the students and at a time in a hybrid model, there is no real need for early bird, later gator, because they are essentially working with the smaller groups, which is what early bird, later gator setups usually are put together for. So, again, this is all for the hybrid model. The full distance learning model is a whole different thing. We're not talking about that right here in this section, so I'm going to move on. And then I guess maybe I should just say that with the hybrid model, once we are allowed to get back to campus, but we're not out of the pandemic, unless by some miracle it all just disappears one day. I believe we will have a school day very similar to those that we have, again, with half of our students there at one time. But again, there may be additional need for time built into ingress and egress and whatever our path of travel that is being worked out entails, again, for safety reasons. So let's not worry about that in this moment, because we got to figure that out when the time comes to figure that out. But more details will definitely come on that when we get to that point. So if I missed anything, anyone chime in.
I think that there just is going to be a little more clarity for folks. I know when we started into distance learning, sometimes it would be a student would have to choose at the high school, do I go to English or do I go to this class, because both were scheduled at the same time. That will not happen in this model. I do feel we can definitely say that with certainty.
Thank you. A few parents ask questions such as this. Can we put cameras in the classrooms so teachers can live stream their classes to the students at home, or let students have Zoom into the classes each day so all the students are still progressing along together?
Hey everyone, I'm Dylan Ferris. I'm the Executive Director of Human Resources and Facilities, and I also work in risk management, and I'm happy to take this question. If you would have asked this question 6 months ago, this would have been a hard no. There would have been no consideration of ever bringing cameras into classrooms or even Zoom. And so first, I just want to reflect for a moment on how far we've come because of the distance learning that we've been in so far. We certainly have explored the option of the cameras in classrooms to bring the students who are at home into the classroom with the students in the classroom. For certain, there are portal devices that make things like this possible. And so it's something that we've looked at. It's also something that we recognize to do correctly requires an investment. There is a cost to implementing devices and the infrastructure necessary to make that happen. So we've made the determination that we will not be putting in portals at this particular time until we can assess correctly what our agreed upon classroom instructional model will be, what our agreements are around liabilities and things that go along with portaling and things like that in the classroom, and agree with our labor partners around what is permissible, frankly, and keeps everybody safe. However, what we have also decided is that one of the strides we've made is that, as mentioned earlier, every student now has a device. And whereas maybe 6 months ago, we would not have permitted any type of Zoom lessons to happen, that is now the primary crux of the way our instruction is being delivered. And so we want to maximize that element and recognize that there will be opportunities for the students who are in class to be engaging with the students who are at home using the platforms and the devices that we have. And so that will be our approach to start the year.
Dr. Ferris, I just kind of wanted to add on to that too, that in terms of streaming the class, if I'm the teacher and I get to see my kid just 2 days a week in the classroom time, I certainly don't want to waste that on just a lecture that anybody can get from home. I want to be interacting with that kid and a couple others in a distance group. That doesn't translate well to the streaming either. I just wanted to throw that in there. I've heard that from teachers. But let me stick with you, Dr. Ferris. What are the possibilities for outdoor learning, including tenting, once we're able to return to school?
So we are encouraging all teachers to utilize the outdoors for their instruction. We're having ventilation and outdoor space and opportunities to physically distance is one of the primary tenets for keeping everybody safe. So we're encouraging folks to get out of their classrooms with their students as the weather permits. We are looking at bringing in tents and canopies so that we can make sure that students have access to shade for activities. We'll be looking at tents to help expand places for our childcare services to be provided, not in replacement of a classroom, but just as another place for students to utilize where they're protected from the elements. So you'll expect to see our students out of their classrooms on campus having lessons all over the district.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. I'll keep it with you then, because I know your office oversees our substitute teacher pool. Do we still have a sub pool? Is it possible that when we return, there will be subs working in other districts and then exposed to other kids and then being exposed to our students? And how do subs take over in distance learning when a teacher becomes sick?
Okay, so yes, we still have a sub pool. We have a small and mighty team of dedicated subs in our district. I'll tell you, when we went into distance learning this last period, we did not utilize substitutes. The only time we would utilize a substitute was when we had somebody who was out for an extended duration, and we had maybe 1 or 2 assignments throughout that whole period of closure. Going into the new school year, not only will we be looking to utilize our current sub pool, but every summer we do recruit and refresh that sub pool. And we recognize that this time around, our subs are going to require a different level of training, because subbing in this environment is going to be different. They're going to have to be prepared to come in and manage the interaction online using the distance learning programs that we have in place, using the devices that we have in place. So we are looking to recruit, again, a small dedicated number of subs who are going to be highly qualified to that end. One of the alternatives that we have, particularly in the distance learning situation where we don't have students physically reporting to the school, is that, and we employed this in the last round, another teacher in the same subject area or the same grade level was able to pick up the assignments of covering for a teacher who may have been ill that day or indisposed that day. So where the opportunity allows for that, we will continue to rely on that. But when we do reopen the schools, we will need our substitutes that are coming in for those day-to-day assignments. To the question about whether or not we'll have subs that are working in other districts and infecting our kids from other places, to the extent that we can, we'd like to have our own dedicated group of subs. It is possible, though, that that's the nature of the position, is that subs go from one class one day to another class the next day. And that is just the way the substitute program operates. And the way that we mitigate that is by having really good, clean protocols for keeping everyone safe with personal protective equipment, having that social distancing, keeping our places clean, and not letting up on any of those things. And as I'll talk about further, really that's the key to keeping everybody safe for all of the questions is we have to follow good safety guidelines, and that would be the case with our subs as well.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Lots of questions about electives, especially, or actually at the secondary level. How are electives impacted? Will the same courses be offered? And then what about AP classes, and can students still participate in SoCal Rock? Multi-part question.
I'll take that one. That's nice and easy one. Yes and yes. Electives will be offered for the hybrid distance program as usual. Students can sign up. They can take these elective classes. I do want to say, as usual, they're student driven. So we have to have enough students interested in an elective course to run it completely. So that has always been how we operated. And it's really nice that we're able to have it students making the decisions for the classes. And then for SoCal Rock, we are going to have students from the hybrid or full distance have access once they deem it safe for us to do that. I spoke to Dr. Gooden today, and she has not heard one way or another quite yet, but as soon as she does, we'll know more and share that out.
Okay, and related to electives, another question on many parents' minds is band, as well as choir and strings. Can you address what's happening to these classes, Ms. Janasek?
Sure. Again, student driven, but yes, we will provide those classes. They will be starting out distance learning. When they do come back, we will have to look at the safety measures in place to make sure that what we have on the hybrid days supports the guidelines that we have, but we will absolutely be providing those courses.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you mentioned the CIF in your opening comment. This one, a big question on a lot of people's sports. What's happening with sports?
Yes, it's really nice to have some clarity with sports. Of course, none of us have a crystal ball and know how the virus will behave in Los Angeles County, but I'm so grateful to the CIF for coming out with a clear plan, and that the clear plan can be applied equally across the state. So what they have done is put sports on pause at this time for the fall. And so instead of 3 sports seasons that typically start right out of the box in the fall, and then we have a winter and spring season, they have compacted that into 3 seasons into 2. So this fall season will actually start with activities in December. And in the fall, sports include boys and girls cross country, 11-man football, traditional competitive cheer, boys and girls volleyball, and boys and girls water polo. And then for the spring season, which is expected to begin in late February or early March, we have baseball, softball, boys and girls basketball, competitive sport cheer, boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls soccer, boys and girls swimming and diving, boys and girls tennis, and boys and girls track and field. And I have to say, at El Segundo High School, we have close to 80% or more of our students are active in athletics. And so we realize for a lot of our kiddos, this is a lifeline for them. So please keep in mind that there is the conditioning option with staying at the high school program, and that there will be virtual conditioning option, sixth period, that I believe Coach Shevlin and Coach Smith will be facilitating. So keep that in mind as you make your choice.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Here's a related question. It's about PE. Are there still required PE minutes? Can a parent opt out of PE? And since PE classes at the secondary level tend to be large, even with half of the class there, how will teachers make sure students are distanced and have no contact during activities?
I can take that one. I've had a lot of people asking me that question. Yes, PE minutes were waived. However, at the secondary level, high school specific, it is a graduation requirement to have 2 years of PE. So although the minutes are waived, the PE requirements for graduation stay in place. And at the middle school, I think the section, we do have the waiver in process that people are allowed to apply for. However, what we plan to do in speaking with teachers and the principals is, while in the hybrid mode, we will have more of some of the lessons that take place. They also incorporate health lessons, social emotional, things like that, and a lot more what Dr. Moore was just talking about is more of the conditioning, and PE will be taking place more on their distance learning days.
Thank you, Ms. Janasek. Okay, there's a question. Can the district try to facilitate social activities for students, even if distanced? Since we won't be able to have, for example, the sixth grade barbecue, dances, web or link crew activities in person, do these just go away, or will the district try to hold some version of them? And then also related, what about all the clubs at the high school?
All right, I'll give a try to this one. So for sure, site by site, we encourage student connectivity as we can best achieve it during this time. For example, the web, the Where Everyone Belongs program at the middle school and Link Crew at the high school will be going virtual. Dr. Gooden and Mr. Wright are working with advisors to plan accordingly to make sure that we help our students that are transitioning into the middle and the high school come in with the welcome of the older students, as we've done in the past. You know, even if they can't be on campus, they need to feel welcome into that whole community, and we want to do that. We know that ASB and staff at the high school did an amazing job of finding ways for students to communicate with each other and share experiences during our spring season of surprise virtual schooling. So I'm expecting they will continue as well on paths such as that. And while we're in distance learning mode for both the hybrid and the full distance students, I have already been talking with PTAs about figuring out how to create online gatherings for things more than just academics. Maybe there can be guest speakers or virtual field trips at the elementary level. Maybe the continuation of programs such as character counts or growing great that provide valuable life lessons outside of the standard curriculum. And I'm very hopeful that our amazing PTAs and principals will come together and find ways to collaborate on things like that. So yes, we will not be eating burgers together in person at the middle school or anything like that in the near future, but I'm excited that we have a lot of creative minds that really know how to bring community together one way or another, and they will figure it out.
Thank you. There's some questions about academic testing. Will we have state testing? Is there still AP testing? And is there gate testing at the elementary school?
I can take that one. And as of right now, yes, absolutely. State testing is still in place. We've had trainings this month and we'll continue to have trainings next month. For AP testing, we did have them in the spring. It was online at home and it worked as well as it could. We do intend to have those again. We have not heard differently. As far as gate testing, we did postpone it from the spring until we could reconvene from last year. So we'll be bringing the gate committee together to look at a good time to assess when it's safe. So we are going to continue with it when we can find a location that's safe, that we can social distance and make sure that we can hold it safely.
Thank you. Will the district be able to provide hard copies of some of the work so students are not staring at a screen all day? And what about for science labs or art projects that require supplies? Will the district supply those?
Well, I'll take that. The short answer is yes. The district is committed to providing all materials that students would need to accomplish the work that has been assigned. And so if it's a hard copy of materials from the classroom or lab supplies or art supplies, district will provide that. And we'll find some safe, socially distanced way to distribute that material, much like we do your books. It might be a drive-through, it might be a window, but we'll definitely provide a means by which parents can pick up those materials for the classes.
Thank you, Dr. Nishime. I think you all know we have a close community who are all supporting each other at this time. So some parents are asking, is it possible to know any earlier this year, especially at the elementary level, who the teachers will be? And if so, could the parents get the contact lists of fellow parents so they can support one another?
I can answer that. I know the principals have worked very hard to try and help support our families. Once the students or the families, parents make the decision for distance learning, that will allow us to know who our students are that are returning and help build the classes. We will absolutely work our hardest to notify parents ahead of time. There are some private security rights for our students that we need to protect in releasing class lists, but I'm sure there are very creative ways that our parents can come together on this and working with their PTAs. But yes, we absolutely are working hard so that you can know who your teacher is, settle some of the anxiety that's coming up, and start preparing for a year ahead.
Thank you. And I think you covered this, Ms. Janice, at the presentation, but I'll ask it again anyway. Can teachers standardize the work across a grade level to facilitate the work of parents supporting one another?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, that is our goal. And I have to say, I really just am so proud of our Richmond Street and Center Street teachers and middle school, but Center Street and Richmond Street did this so naturally in this past week. They came together. Our fourth grade team was sharing some of the collaboration and units that they're sharing and timelines. And they are working so hard to make it so that our parents can support from their side too. And it's really wonderful. It's also helping them really collaborate and strengthen what they're pushing out.
Thank you. I'm going to take some of these next questions because they're about the distance learning versus hybrid. Can we switch from hybrid full distance in the middle of the year if our comfort level changes? And probably not. We need to know at the beginning of the year for staffing purposes. There's a question, will there be a disconnect if students in ASU PD for a semester or even a full year and then return to the hybrid or traditional model? And what do we plan to do about that? So no, there won't be a disconnect. The beauty of this program is we're using our own teachers and our teachers talk to each other. So this is similar at Arena High School, for example, we have a full virtual program already in place. And when those students go back, they transition well back to the traditional model when they either come back to Arena classroom or the high school. And our teachers talk. So we will make sure that, that there are progress notes so that there's no gap. And so that's a smooth transition for students if they're returning either at the semester or at the year. There's a couple questions. If we have to pull out of ESUSD for any reason or choose to use our own homeschool program, we have a spot if we decide to return, even if it's mid-year. And that answer is yes. If you are a resident here, you always have a spot in our schools. If you move here in November, you can enroll your kids. So the answer to that is yes. And the next questions are site specific. I'll take the first one because it's about Arena. And the question is, what's happening with Arena High? Arena High is starting in distance like everybody else. And what happens when we return really depends on our numbers, because about half of our students in Arena anyway are virtual. If we're able to have our Arena students attend 4 days a week because the numbers are low enough where we can distance, then that's what we would plan to do, but that decision has not been made yet. And some parents are wondering, will schools be hosting their own town halls for site-specific questions?
Yes, I had a chance to check in with Dr. Gooden and our elementary principals. First of all, the middle school just did a comprehensive parent meeting last week, and I know Dr. Plotkin as well as Ms. Guadalupe also joined that meeting, and that was well attended, and the video is posted. Also want to say I appreciate we have well over 800 people on our call now, so thank you for joining us. Specifically, the high school feels as if it would be best that Dr. Gooden is going to create a Google form so that it can be very individualized for that particular family, and that someone from the high school will tailor their approach working with you. In addition, if a parent from the high school selects the ASU program, that perhaps a counselor outreach or an administrator outreach would occur, and they would be going over and supporting them in course selections and whatnot. So they're really going to be doing a personalized approach. At the elementary at this time, Dr. Lee and Dr. Monahan do not have a town hall planned. However, I know there will be orientation meetings that occur for our incoming students as well as our incoming kinders, just as we have done in the past, and those will occur virtually. In addition, the elementary does not have the complexities such as a choice of ASU. So in the outside program, it will be distance learning with our own teachers and or the hybrid model. So you can certainly address your questions directly to Dr. Monahan, Dr. Lee, or Mr. Oleshik. So, and this decision does need to occur so that we can appropriately staff for these models and let our teachers know what they'll be teaching next year.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And yes, just to reiterate, there will be an email coming from Educational Services that has the form to opt into distance learning, which is due by July 30 at the end of the day. And if you know that you want the hybrid model, you don't need to do anything. You can ignore it, but it's an opt-in for full distance learning. Let's shift gears and go to Eagle's Nest. And can you update us on what's happening with Eagle's Nest?
Yes, I'm happy to take this question. So we're actually exploring a similar program at Eagle's Nest to what we're looking at for the Learning Connection. So a full day childcare program through the preschool, operating probably 8:30 to 4, 5 days a week. And there was a survey that went out to currently enrolled preschool parents last week. We're getting those results in now, and then we'll be looking at what is feasible for us to offer to our preschool parents. We'll also, sorry, I wanted to just add, we'll be expanding that survey to, I believe, staff and then the entire ESUSD community once we finalize the results for our currently enrolled families.
Okay, and Ms. Lenz, then can you answer this? The parent asks, will there be any effort to coordinate TLC pods with home learning pods?
Right, so I mentioned in my on my slide that when we're in full distance learning, we'll be working to maintain those pods, that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do that in-person hybrid model. But one of the things we will take into consideration as we're building those distance learning pods is who do we anticipate staying in distance learning all year, because it would make sense to group those students if it's possible, particularly at the middle school level where they will be on a different program.
Thank you. One more TLC question. If I choose to decline my invitation to TLC this semester, what will be the process to get in when we go back to full in-person classes? And would I need to or be able to pay tuition to secure my spot for next semester, even if we choose not to attend this semester?
We've been actually getting this question quite a bit. And also, I actually spoke to the program directors this morning just to make sure that we had finalized how we're going to manage this. We will be taking applications probably mid next week for the fall 5-day-a-week distance learning TLC model. If we go into in-person learning and that shifts to a 3-day-a-week model for students who need it, students currently enrolled in the fall will be given priority for that enrollment, followed by any families that were already enrolled in TLC for the 2021 school year, but chose not to attend right when we opened. After that, we would open it up to the wider community. We've also gotten this question actually about the 21-22 school year, and it would be a similar process. So families that participated in the 2021 school year would have priority for the 21-22 school year, followed by families that were enrolled but chose to defer, and then we would open it up to the wider community. So I do have to just mention, though, that there are space constraints for all of these programs. So while we would look to expand as much as we could based on family need, we do have to stay within our space constraints and within the health department protocols.
Thanks, Ms. Lenz. Okay, Mr. Rabigi and Dr. Ferris, there's a bunch coming to you now. First, there are a number of questions about what will happen if a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19, the threshold for shutting down classes in schools, contact tracing, etc. Dr. Ferris, could you refer us to the specific guidance we must use to address these questions?
Sure, thank you. So about 2 weeks ago, the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health issued their protocol and guidance, really directives for school districts on this topic. It's currently posted on their website. There will be an El Segundo Unified School District specific plan that will be posted on our website in the near future, and we'll also put that out when it's ready. But here are the basic tenets of how that would work. First of all, there will be a designated compliance officer and liaison to the Department of Public Health. Our COVID compliance officer currently is Mr. Ali Rabi'i, who's here with us this afternoon. We'll also have a compliance task force, and the task force, it will be a number of individuals who are in place to make sure that we're actually doing all of the safety, following all of the safety guidance that are in place. And that task force will include district officials, site principals and designees, and it could include any members of the staff or even parents. And really, it's again just to monitor and make sure that we are actually implementing all of those safety guidelines. In the event that there is a positive case of COVID in our schools, whether it's a student or a staff, our first thing is to get that student away from our schools and isolated, tested, and then given some direction for home isolation. If it's a matter of exposure, but not necessarily testing, it's getting them tested and quarantined for a 14-day period. So our task, our basic guidance is if there's one case and that person it's a confirmed positive case, we will be reporting that to the Department of Public Health. We will be tasked with listing every student and staff member who has been exposed to that individual for 48 hours before the positive test or 48 hours before the first symptoms presented. Now, the key is around what constitutes exposure. So the nature of this question is, and I understand because we're all having this question, is if a student is exposed, are we going to have to shut down a campus, right? Are we sending all the kids home? What's the protocol here? So the basis for determining an exposure, and here's what's described in the protocol, is that someone who has been within 6 feet of this individual for more than 15 minutes. And then we would add, and that's even with a mask, right? So if we were following all of our protocols expeditiously with fidelity, everybody was maintaining 6 feet of distance, everyone's wearing their masks, and there's a presumed positive case or a tested positive case, it wouldn't necessarily mean that anybody who has been in a classroom with this individual would be considered exposed. And that is going to be the charge of the school nurse and whoever's the designee at that site to do that contact tracing and make that determination of, do we believe somebody has been exposed or not? I will tell you, we are going to err on the side of caution, and we're going to be very conservative about that assessment. So I don't want you to hear what I'm saying and think that we're going to, be cavalier about this. So again, anybody who has then been considered exposed would be needing to quarantine, home isolate and quarantine for 14 days and directed to get tested. There are 2 more protocols here, and that's for if there is more than one case. So if there's a second case, it's essentially the same process, but we're also charged with trying to figure out if there is a connection between these 2 individuals, meaning were they at some point in contact with one another while they were infectious? Do we think these 2 cases are related, or if they're not? And if they are, or if they're not, we're also supposed to use this case to identify any weaknesses in our processes. Is there a particular area of campus that's not following proper safety procedures? Do we have people congregating too closely? Is there something we can do differently? When you get to 3 is when it ratchets up. It's the same process. We need to identify, are these cases related? But we also have to report to the acute communicable disease control education sector. And from there, they will be providing us direction on what the proper protocol is. They will tell us if we need to be sending large amounts of people home or if we'll be closing down any buildings or anything of that nature. So as I mentioned, these protocols are available for review by the public. They're all on the DPH website. And as we have our specific procedures tailored to our district, those will be posted for review as well.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Mr. BE, you gave us the presentation on the health and safety procedures, but are there any specifics? Parents are asking about things like protocol for entering and exiting school, monitoring of the bathrooms, what's going to happen during lunchtime, are kids eating together, that type of thing.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll take a try at this, Dr. Plotkin. So, first off, before responding to this question with a concrete example, certainly COVID-19 has brought on for us an adjusted vernacular, if you will, in K-12 education. So we've got on the curriculum side, asynchronous instruction, synchronous instruction, distance learning, hybrid learning. On the health and safety piece, we're looking at two very important aspects: cohort grouping and physical or social distancing. So as we answer these questions from that lens, we'll be seeing those phrases repeatedly mentioned. So to give a concrete example of how a typical school day would look like once we physically open our schools to students, say I'll take Center Street as an example. You have a student at Center Street. So the first aspect, of course, aside from the health screening, which we'll get to later on, is the arrival procedures. It's very important to have an arrival procedure that's staggered in nature and, of course, grouped in a cohort fashion. So there may be a path of travel that starts on the right in front of the school, right there on Center Street, or on the south side towards the south parking lot along Mariposa, or the north side, or even on California. So your student, of course, then enters the campus. Once they're in campus, they'll be seeing a lot of yellow arrows on the ground indicating to them their path of travel, how to get to their classrooms, and of course to remain in their specific grouping or cohort. Then there will be a plethora of signage reminding students to, of course, have their face coverings on, socially distanced or physically distanced 6 feet apart, and of course healthy hygiene, washing their hands namely. They'll notice that those bubblers, that's another part of our vernacular, those bubblers are those drinking fountains, they will be disabled or covered. They will not be accessible anymore. And so students will need to bring their own water bottles. We do have water filling stations at our schools, and maintenance operations is actually currently exploring retrofitting the old school drinking fountains into water filling stations. So they'll be seeing those all over. And of course, once they get into the classroom, it's going to be a whole different classroom environment in terms of just the configuration of the seats and, of course, the number of students in those classrooms. Now, there was, of course, the mention of, how is lunch going to look like? So working very closely with Kim Lins and the food services team and our site administrators, there will be, at the elementary level, staggered recess and lunch times so as to limit those cohort of students. There will be lunches served in the classrooms or outside with the classroom cohort specifically supervised by school staff. So it's very important, of course, we keep the students together as a cohort and where possible, of course, bring in the meals into the classroom. At the secondary level, we're looking at designated routes for the proper traffic flow, efficient traffic flow. For example, at El Segundo High School, we'll have stairwells that will be marked as going up and other stairwells as marked as going down. So there will be that kind of traffic. It's very much like going into an airport, if you will, with all the signage and directions that we'll see. And of course, it's important, going back to my days as an assistant principal at the middle and high school, kids' behaviors, students' behaviors. So in addition to all the other behaviors that teachers and staff reinforce with our students, we will now have to be reinforcing those social and physical distancing behaviors. Kids will see a plethora of floor stickers that will say, with their school logo, that say stand here, a reminder to be 6 feet apart, and they'll need to position themselves at those spots, particularly in the restroom area. So there will be floor stickers on the grounds next to restrooms where they'll have to stand so that we can monitor the number of students that are using a restroom at each and every single interval. That will be kind of a brief but concrete example of how a typical school day would look like, say, at Center Street or at any one of our schools.
Thank you. More specific question here. What is the maximum number of students and staff allowed in a classroom at a time? And there was a question about PPE provided, and I think you've already answered that.
Sure thing. So back in late May, early June, myself and the entire maintenance operations staff, we actually went classroom by classroom and calculated the square footage of each classroom at all of our sites. The typical square footage of a California public school classroom, whether secondary or elementary, is 960 square feet. Now, we do have a lot of diversity with the square footages of our classrooms. Some could be as low as 730, others could be as high as 980, even over 1,000. Using the rule of the 6-foot separation, or also the 3-foot radius from student to another student, each student will be comprising roughly 44 square feet. So we took those numbers, we took our measurements, and working closely, of course, with M&O and with our site administrators, we're looking at in-person instruction for kindergarten to 3rd grade. The class size will be limited at 13 students. For in-person 4th and 5th grade, the class size will be limited to 17 students. And of course, for the secondary level, we're looking at 18 students. Now, there are those situations where we will not be able to meet that number based on the order. So we've resolved that matter because the maintenance and operations team has been hard at work constructing partitions. And so we have a number of partitions that, of course, will meet the specific requirements in the order, so that we could have 2 students next to each other, but divided by that partition, or as we would call it, a very large virus or sneeze guard. And
Thank
yes,
you.
as far as PPEs go, Dr. Block, correcting, 5 cloth masks per each and every staff member and student. Additional PPEs also include having medical grade masks for any student who may fall ill during the school day, medical grade masks, of course, for health personnel, and of course, hand sanitizer stations, dispensers, and hand sanitizer bottles, basically throughout all of our campuses and classrooms.
Thank you, Mr. B. So you brought up masks. Let's talk about that for a minute. A parent referenced Governor Newsom's press release when he noted that masks are only required for students in grades 3 through 12. What will ESUSD do about kids in grades TK through 2, as the prospect of no masks is a little worrisome?
Sure thing. So we're actually still in discussions for that in our Health and Safety Committee regarding that. We did, of course, see that direction and that narrative that came out from the governor's office, but we will be finalizing our approach regarding that, Dr. Clark.
Thank you. And Dr. Nishimi, I saw you started to unmute.
Yeah, I did want to say, I think Mr. Rabihi has addressed a lot of this, but nothing precludes a parent from putting a mask on their child. It's not required, but it doesn't mean that they cannot wear a mask. So if a parent is more comfortable having their child wear a mask, that certainly is an option once in-person schooling is reinstituted. And also, I'd like to remind parents that that distance ed option is always available to the student if they're uncomfortable sending their child to school prior to the introduction of a vaccine or some other measure to mitigate the virus. So if any parent is uncomfortable with a situation of no mask, that distance ed option is always there.
Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. Yes, I really want to clarify here. This is another example of the concentric circles I've talked with the board about in the past, in the fact that the governor came out and said this. However, the health order from Los Angeles County Department of Public Health is the order that we follow. And actually, she ordered, Dr. Barbara Ferrer ordered that all students over age 2 are indeed required to wear face coverings at all times while on school property. So as a school district in Los Angeles County, we would be required to have all our students wearing these face coverings. So this is an example of the governor may say one thing, but as a school district in the county, we must follow our health order. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Dr. Moore. Sticking with masks, some parents are asking, well, what's going to happen if a student takes the mask off, or a student who refuses to be mask compliant? Or similarly, what if it's a staff who's not wearing a mask, not wearing a mask properly? And one final question about that: can a student wear a face shield instead of a mask?
Okay, hey, I'll take that one. So, our stance and understanding of the guidance on this is that being masked is a prerequisite of being at school, and it's for the safety of everyone. It's not optional. It's not something that can be debated. And, people cannot refuse to do it, as a political position. They will be precluded from coming to school is our bottom line. Now, there will be some exceptions to this, to be clear, and that would be somebody who has a legitimate health issue or someone who has special needs or possibly a behavioral issue that prevents them from keeping a mask on their face all day. In those cases, we'll have a team work together like we would for any special needs situation to identify what's the next best thing for that student and what other interventions might be put in place to mitigate that situation. As far as disciplinary consequences, because I think that was also part of this, right, is what will we do? We'll have to respond in an age-appropriate manner, of course, and we're going to have to balance the safety of all students against the rights of all our students to be at school as well. But right now, our position is, students may not be in school unless they remain compliant with keeping that face covering on. I do anticipate this is going to be tested over the next couple of months, and we'll get some further guidance on how to handle these things from the county. Although I don't expect it will be tested through El Segundo because our students are so well behaved and compliant, and parents understand the need to maintain safety. With regard to the face shields, there will be some situations where face shields are appropriate. There is no verification that face shields prevent the spread of COVID. So that's our bottom line. But there are going to be situations where face shields would be necessary. And an obvious example would be for around a student who's hearing impaired, who needs to see a person's mouth moving. A speech and language pathologist needs to have their face exposed, and teachers may need to have their face exposed when teaching at certain points. And so in those cases, there may be an appropriate time to use a face shield. The guidance on using such a face shield now includes that it must have a neck drape attached to it. So it has to have a covering that covers the sides and the bottom to prevent that, respiratory droplets from coming out. Of course, that was after we bought 300 regular face shields. So we'll go back to the drawing board on that one. And I think that about covers it.
Yeah, you got all the pieces of that, Dr. Ferris. Thank you. We have a parent who cites her experience volunteering in classrooms, and she notes she sees many kids come to school sick. And so she's asking us to explain the decision to leave temperature taking up to parents.
All right, I'll take this one, Dr. Plotkin. So, first of all, on July 13th, as Dr. Ferris mentioned, we had the county health order that came out for the safe reopening of K-12 schools. And in that order, it specifically talked about health screening. And this is, of course, addressing temperature checks. It clearly states where feasible, schools can go about conducting the health screenings on site. And so the Health and Safety Committee for the past several meetings, as well as before even the Health and Safety Committee was formed, we have been looking and exploring all possibilities, I should say, with regard to health screening. We've looked at thermal scanning. We've looked at an actual app that can be pushed out to parents and families. We've even looked at a smart thermometer. Everything is on the table. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the health screening of our students, it's a partnership effort between our district and, of course, our families, our parents. We need to work together on this. Just like, when a student does not come to school back during the pre-COVID era, we'd have site administrators going to the sites to see what's going on, why you're not making it to campus. The same thing applies in this situation as well. We need our parents to work together with us, because to curb the spread of COVID-19, we should basically make sure that we don't have any sick students or ill students coming onto our campuses. And so we do need the support of our families. But we are still exploring other options to have on-site health screenings, and more information that will be forthcoming as we finalize that approach.
Thanks, Mr. BE. Will students having no fever but exhibiting other symptoms, such as cough or cold, will they be permitted to still attend to school when we return?
I'm going to take this one as a parent of students. So when we get to the point of allowing students to return to physical school, no symptoms are welcome on campus. None, now more than ever. I'm saying this because I'm sure you've seen the list of symptoms of COVID, which are like everything. Anything could be a symptom at this point. This is how this virus has evolved. So I'm saying it now, I'm sure we'll say it many times. If your student is feeling off in any way, please do not send him or her to school, as it may endanger the lives of many, many others. Again, there are so many symptoms and so many long-term effects of this virus that we just don't know about and we are very concerned with. And, you know, again, being asymptomatic yet contagious is also a daunting issue. And that's why we have to take so many thoughtful, intentional, medically required steps to create as healthy and safe an environment for our staff and students as we can in order to come together at all. So again, while our staff will be on the lookout for symptomatic students, they shouldn't have to be. That should be our parents' jobs, to please keep them home if they're exhibiting anything that's off. It's really best not to force that responsibility on the school community in the first place. So should a student come to school with any concerning symptoms, they will be instantly removed from their cohort and require immediate pickup from campus. We will have a safe place for them to stay for the very short time that they are waiting to be picked up from campus. So again, you know, if anyone in your household is exposed to a virus, we would ask that you self-quarantine and follow with social with distance learning to consider yourself safe enough to return to a community environment. But again, we'll get into more of that detail when we get to the point of in-person schooling. So thank you.
Yeah, very definitive answer. Thank you, Ms. Miller-Zarnicki. Moving on to the next category, there are a few questions about enrollment and acceptance of interdistrict permits. Will the new model impact the ability to accept interdistrict permits? Should permits parents be worried about their enrollment status? And others ask if we should now try to limit the number of permits we take in to make more room for residents.
Yes, I'll take that question. All children of in-district families are enrolled in El Segundo Unified School District schools before consideration is made to accommodate any interdistrict permits. So no parents within the district should be worried about the enrollment status of their child. They will be enrolled. Interdistrict permits are considered where there is room at each grade level. And I do want to emphasize too that the standards that we have for interdistrict permit students are higher than that which we require of in-district students. But we will continue to accept interdistrict permits, and we welcome interdistrict permits to the extent we have room. And I'd like just to remind parents that our state allocation is considerably less than our neighboring districts like Inglewood and Lawndale and Centinela Valley, because we're not eligible for additional funds based on concentration grants for a high number of foster care, homeless, and free or reduced lunch students. So our interdistrict students are critical in order to receive the full extent of the funding that we are eligible for the state, and it allows us to maintain our educational excellence. And really, interdistrict students only represent about 10% of our student body. So even though they're a small portion, their presence is really critical for our district to be able to offer everything that we do for our students at the basic level. Additional things, of course, we rely on Ed Foundation and PTA. But, you know, we need every dollar we can possibly get from the state, and we must fully experience the enrollment that we're capable of experiencing in order to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nishime. Ms. Janicek, your presentation slide covered parent engagement. I'm going to ask these anyway, though. Will there be any advanced information or training for parents on how to use the new learning platforms and other tools and applications teachers will be using prior to the first day of school? I think parents are saying, like, we don't want to wait till the first day to learn it. And then will there be resources provided to parents to support their students in distance learning?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Plotkin. I think I did address some of this, but I don't think I can say it enough. Our parents are our partners. We are in this together, and we need to support you also. So we have the subcommittees that have rolled out and really focus on certain areas. One of them is parent engagement. In the Instruction and Social Emotional Committee, but also another component is parent engagement. That committee is making sure that we have everything in place to support the sites, to support their parents. So we have two incredible instructional coaches, Mr. Branlin and Ms. Leonard. They are already working on videos that we can support parents on the platforms. We've also worked really hard to consolidate a lot of the instructional components that we're having, not components, like websites or resources, so that parents aren't trying to have to find certain things. I was talking to Dr. Lee today, and she said one of the great things they're going to do is teach parents how to maybe bookmark some of those sites on the Chromebook that goes home. So parents don't have to help their child find these things. So we're going to help with some of the strategies to really help our students at home with our parents. Also really make sure that they understand where they can go to help support their student. And so we'll have videos, we're going to have ongoing training. We'll have laid out very clearly who to ask the questions to when you get stuck. Because obviously teachers will be teaching, and if your child is stuck, where can they go? So we're going to really outline who to go to for help, but also put out that information ahead of time.
Thank you for that further information, Ms. Janicek. Okay, a parent asks, what are the best ways parents can support teachers in the district in this new model? They want to know.
I'm happy to take that. And we so appreciate our parents as partners and appreciate the help. We had this question recently from our PTAs. So thank you for all you do to support our schools as well. I think it's important that at this time, especially in a distance learning environment, we need to overly communicate. So certainly you can ask your teacher perhaps how you can support, or perhaps if they have any needs, but please check in with our school principal. I noticed one of our board members sent me a donors choose where a grade level at one of our school sites where somebody's fundraising for workbooks for them. So I don't even know if the principal knows about this or if the principal could purchase that. So we really appreciate if you check in with the principal on some of these things, because sometimes these teachers don't even tell the principal that this is a need that they have. And if it is a instructional material, we want to be sure that we're providing that. And so we as a district take it seriously that we don't want something on a donors choose that may be something that we ourselves should be providing our students. As Dr. Nishime said, we want to provide these things as part of a free and appropriate public education. I also want to say, please join our PTAs. Please join our Ed Foundation. This is a great place to engage with other parents. We're looking forward to offering some parent events and parent education for you at this time. I know we're all living in a very uncertain world, and so we want to support you. We are so grateful to so many of you out there for being an ambassador for ESUSD, for helping your neighbor or a fellow parent or a peer or a friend when they're confused and not sure, to say, hey, did you go back and reread Dr. Moore's newsletter? Or, oh, I saw it said this, and here's where it said that. Everybody is dealing with this very uncertain world we're living in very differently. So when you can be an ambassador and help one another, I think now more than ever, we really want to deputize all of you to really support us. This team who's here this evening has received countless questions from parents, and I know you're frustrated. I wish we had answers to all your questions. But being in this world that we're living in right now, we don't have that question. So really, when you think about whether you want to do distance learning or hybrid learning, you need to think about, do I want my student back at school? Because that's really the key question here. And is that more important to you than remaining in with one of your regular teachers? So anyway, and anytime you have a problem as we start this new process in opening with distance learning and more robust program, I really want to say, please give our teachers the professional courtesy if you have a concern or you have a question, to reach out to them. They are the education professionals. They want to help you. They are here for you. And so please reach out to them first. Sometimes, somebody gets frustrated and all of a sudden it escalates to a very high level. And our teachers want to hear from you. They want to help you. They care about your child. So please reach out to them first.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And since you mentioned the decision between hybrid and distance, I just want to remind everyone that the email went out about the Zoom tomorrow at 12 o'clock. If you, after right now, you're still undecided. So community, we are about 100 minutes in and we're down to our last question. Thank you for sticking with us. What happens if my question wasn't answered while watching this town hall?
If your question is not answered, I would encourage you to reach out to the site administrator or to a counselor, but please realize there are people working now on behalf of our students that aren't even on the clock. They don't even have, they're not in a paid status right now, but they care so much, they're here. So please be patient, and it is more than likely that your email will collect and they will get back to you. So please be patient on that. In addition, please stay informed. Watch our school board meetings. We have 2 meetings in August that are very, very important. We have a meeting on August 4th and another meeting on August 25th prior to the opening of school. Read communications that come out from the district office as well as your school site. Be patient, we are each taking time. I know I took a day or 2 off for family, and so it's going to take me a day or 2 to sift through all my emails. So please be patient as we get through that. And in closing, as we wind down this evening, I really want to thank our panel, and I really want to thank the cabinet team specifically for taking your time to provide this thoughtful forum, and hopefully you walked away with some new knowledge. I do think that lots of things are in flux. We're going to continue to monitor and adjust. You heard our commitment to clear safety protocols when students are back in our schools. You heard about the Learning Connection and the survey to register and that we can staff that program appropriately. We recognize at this time, public education, which has been so stable and so predictable for so many of us, is being disrupted like it has never been before. And in turn, this has disrupted our students, it's disrupted our employees, it's disrupted you, the parents, and your households. So we realize and recognize that you're all in a state of disequilibrium, and so are we. And so each day, although it might only be a small step, we as a team are striving to give you some degree of clarity and have more answers than you did the last time. And so it's a process, and we are committed that it's ever evolving. But as each week new information comes out, we continue to try to provide you those appropriate updates. In addition, I just really want to share that it's our collective goal that August 26th, El Segundo Unified School Districts will open to distance learning successfully in this model, and our parents are going to be patient and understand. And you will see firsthand that our teachers have learned a lot, and they are committed, and they're working hard to provide a high quality education for our students. And for some of you that we may have lost your confidence based on your experience this spring, we're going to gain it back. And so please work with your teacher, and we're going to continue to strive to do our very best. We're going to thoughtfully consider our best next steps towards implementing hybrid and eventually getting back to face-to-face learning, because we can't wait to have our students back with us. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to this Board of Education. These are tough times to be an elected official. These are tough times to be a leader. And so I am absolutely grateful and blessed to work with you as we continue to navigate our journey in trying to do what absolute best we can on behalf of the students and parents of this community. So thank you, panel, and thank you, parents, for sticking with us. Good night.